All right, let's get right into it. Every so often, you see a company that just completely flips the script, just reinvents itself, almost out of nowhere. And today, we're talking about one of those exact stories. It's about a 30-year-old manufacturer, a company you think was pretty old school, that just launched a factory. A factory so groundbreaking, it could literally change the entire game for robotics.
And look, don't just take my word for it. This quote right here, this is what the industry press is calling it. They're literally comparing it to Tesla's Gigafactory moment, but for humanoid robots in China. I mean, that is a massive claim, right? To put it on the same level as the factory that revolutionized EV production? So you've got to be asking, what on earth did they build to get that kind of hype?
So, picture this. It's March 29th, just a few weeks ago, and a brand new factory officially powers on. And this number you're seeing, that's not a goal for 5 years from now. That's its annual capacity for making humanoid robots, starting now, over 10,000. I mean, to really get what that means, you have to realize the entire industry, up until this point, has been thinking in terms of hundreds of robots per line, maybe. This isn't just a step up, it's a massive quantum leap.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about some R&D lab where they carefully assemble a few prototypes. No. This is a fully automated, industrial-scale factory floor. And it's turning out one incredibly complex humanoid robot every 30 minutes. That's mass production. There's no way else to describe it.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around how this factory even exists, we have to look at the company that built it. Because this story, it's way bigger than just one building. It's about a complete and total transformation. A reinvention that's resting on 3 really powerful new pillars.
So who is it? You're probably thinking it has to be one of the big tech names we all know, right? Makes sense. But the company that just basically fired the starting gun on the mass production era for humanoids, it's almost certainly a name you've never heard before.
Here it is, Dongfang Precision. For 30 years, their whole world was making the complex machines that make cardboard boxes. Seriously, classic old-school industrial stuff. But while they were doing that, they were secretly planning one of the most incredible pivots you'll ever see in manufacturing.
Now, this is super important to get. The new Dongfang isn't just a robot company, not at all. It's a completely new kind of company, built on 3 very different things. First, you've got the humanoid factory we've been talking about. Second, they have this surprisingly fast-growing business making boat engines. And third, they have this hidden portfolio of tech investments that, well, it might just be the most valuable piece of the entire puzzle. So, let's break each one of these down.
Okay, so let's talk about their strategy for robotics. It's brilliant. They're not trying to be the next Tesla, designing everything from the ground up. Instead, they want to be the Foxconn for humanoids. Think about that. They're not building the AI, the robot's brain. They're leaving that to their partners. What they are doing is bringing their 30 years of hardcore, precision manufacturing know-how to the table to solve the single hardest problem: how do you actually build thousands of these things reliably and at scale? For all these little robot startups, that manufacturing piece is a massive wall they can't climb. Dongfang is the one saying, don't worry about the factory, we've got that covered. This whole division of labor, that's their secret weapon.
But wait, it gets better. This manufacturing model is just one piece of it. See, Dongfang didn't just decide to build robots for other companies, they also started investing in them. And this move has created this secret vault of value that's just sitting inside the company waiting to be unlocked.
Just take a look at this. They've been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Dongfang owns a slice of companies all across the robotics supply chain. They own a chunk of Logitech, that's the robot designer. They have a big stake in Jiaten, a company that does smart logistics and those automated warehouse vehicles. Their client list includes Huawei and Tesla, by the way. They've also got a huge piece of Ruyu Tech, which is literally developing the AI brain for these robots. And for good measure, they even own part of a company making high-tech nuclear parts. And look at that last column. See a pattern? They're all getting ready to IPO.
So the billion-dollar question, or maybe the multi-billion-dollar question is, what's all this worth? Well, depending on how those IPOs go, the numbers are just staggering. Even if you're super conservative, you're looking at maybe 7 to 9 billion yuan. The base case? We're talking 12 to 14 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That base value alone could be worth more than half of what the entire company is valued at on the stock market today.
And this is where we get to the real drama of the story. You've got this incredible, once-in-a-generation opportunity, but it's all being funded by this huge pile of cash that just landed. And the company's own history creates this billion-dollar test for the people in charge. They have this amazing shot, for sure, but they also have a past they need to prove they've moved on from.
Yeah. On April 9th,
This number showed up in Dongfang's bank account, about 6.3 billion yuan. That's roughly 900 million US dollars. Just boom. A massive cash windfall that completely changes the entire game.
So where do they get all that cash? Well, they sold their old cardboard packaging business, the thing they'd been doing for 30 years, and they got a fantastic price for it. They basically cashed in their past to bankroll their future. But now comes the hard part, the ultimate test for management. What do you do with almost $1 billion in cash, and how do you make sure you don't mess it up completely?
And that question is so heavy because of the company's history. It's really a tale of two very different deals. The recent sale of their packaging business, a total home run, a masterstroke. But investors have long memories. They remember the Polyli deal back in 2018. It was a disastrous attempt to get into the EV battery business that ended in a huge, painful write-off. And the ghost of that failure is still hanging around, putting all this pressure on them to prove, this time, they'll get it right.
Now, while all this futuristic robot stuff is going on, we can't forget about that third pillar, the business that's actually paying the bills right now. It's a company called Baishen Power, and they make high-performance outboard motors for boats. And it's no slouch. It's a real growth engine, with revenues up 34% last year. So what's the catch? Well, about 80% of what they sell gets exported, mostly to the United States, and that makes them extremely vulnerable if new tariffs come into play.
All right, let's step back and put all the pieces on the board. We've got a world-first robot factory. We've got this hidden portfolio that's packed with potential tech unicorns. We've got a massive mountain of cash, a fast-growing engine business, and of course some very, very real risks. So, how do we even begin to make sense of all this?
Well, one of the best ways to analyze a complicated company like this one is to use what they call a sum of the parts valuation. It's a pretty simple concept, really. You just break the company down into all its different pieces, figure out what each part is worth on its own, the cash, the businesses, the investments, and then you add it all up to see what the whole thing might be worth. And when you do that math for Dongfang, things get really, really interesting. So let's use some pretty standard estimates. The cash is worth about 6 billion yuan. The boat engine business, maybe 1.3 billion. The brand new robot factory could be worth somewhere between 2 and 4 billion, and that secret portfolio of tech stocks, a whopping 12 to 14 billion. You add all that together, and you land somewhere in the ballpark of 21 to 25 billion yuan. Now compare that to its current stock market value of around 20.8 billion. It lines up really closely. This chart right here really drives the point home. That hidden tech portfolio we keep talking about, it could be more than half the company's total value. The cash is another quarter. So think about it. The two new parts of the company, the robot factory and the investment portfolio, plus the cash they got from selling the old part, that's almost 90% of what Dongfang is potentially worth. It's not an exaggeration to say this is a fundamentally new company.
But, and this is a big but, this story is absolutely packed with risk. Those potential US tariffs, they could totally kneecap the engine business. Management could fumble that huge pile of cash, just like they did in the past. The big tech IPOs they're counting on could completely fizzle out. And on top of all that, the market is not asleep here. The stock has already shot up 150% this past year. So you have to wonder, how much of this good news is already baked into the price? So it all comes down to this one final question. Are we watching the birth of the next great tech giant in China? Or is this just a massive, high-stakes gamble that's doomed to repeat the mistakes of its past? We are literally watching an old-world industrial company try to morph into a new-world tech powerhouse right before our eyes. They have the factory, they have the $1 billion in cash, but that line between being a visionary and just a gambler can be razor thin. And with Dongfang Precision, only time is going to tell which side of that line they end up on.